The Otsu Incident was a failed assassination attempt occurred on May 11, 1891, that the Crown Prince of the Russian Empire, Nicholas, later Tsar Nicholas II, was attacked in Otsu City, Shiga Prefecture, by a patrol officer, Tsuda Sanzō, who guarded Nicholas during his visit to Japan. This incident was so significant in the modern history of Japan because it triggered independence of judiciary from government's interference and raised people's awareness of separation of powers. After a big argument, Tsuda Sanzō was sentenced to life imprisonment, and the Minister of Justice, Akiyoshi Yamada, resigned his post. To attend the groundbreaking ceremony of the Trans-Siberian Railroad for Far Eastern countries, Nicholas and his Russian fleet made a visit to Japan on the way to Vladivostok. Nicholas's fleet first called in Kagoshima, then Nagasaki, and then Kobe. Japan was still a lesser nation at that time, so Japanese government made all-out efforts to entertain Nicholas. In the afternoon on May 11, on the way back to Kyoto after a day trip to Lake Biwa, Nicholas, Prince George of Greece, the third son of George I of Greece, and Imperial Prince Takehito rode on a rickshaw one by one in this order, and they were going through Otsu City. Then, Nicholas was attacked by Tsuda Sanzō, a patrol officer of Shiga Prefecture and one of his escort policemen, who swung at Nicholas with a saber and injured him. Nicholas jumped off the rickshaw and escaped to an alley, but Tsuda still ran after him and tried to attack him again. But Prince George struck Tsuda's back with his bamboo cane, and then a rickshaw driver in Nicholas's entourage, Jisaburo Mukuhata, grabbed Tsuda's legs and pulled him to the ground, and finally Tsuda was arrested by a patrol officer. Immediately after the incident, Nicholas's wounds were dressed on the spot. The Grand Duke suffered a 9-centimeter wound to the back of his head, reaching the bone, and a similar 10-centimeter wound to the forehead, and a wounded palm and an ear. A 2.5-centimeter fragment of the forehead bone was removed during the dressing of the wound. I'm just hoping that the Japanese wouldn't think I would change my feelings towards them and be less grateful for their hospitality, Nicholas said to Prince Arasagawa Takehito. Nicholas was hastily taken to Kobe harbor, where Russian doctors from the Russian cruiser Pamiat Azova made stitches on his wound. The wound, however, became the reason for excruciating headaches that bothered Nicholas for the rest of his life. The Japanese society was awestruck and disgusted with what Tsuda did. In fear that the incident might exacerbate the relations between two countries, Emperor Meiji himself traveled to Kyoto immediately to meet Grand Duke Nicholas. As a gesture of respect for the wounded Russian heir, the next day after the incident, theaters, stock exchanges, and public houses were closed. Some members of the Japanese government were afraid that the Russians would rob them of the emperor, but Meiji insisted on his own, saying, "Russians are not barbarians, and they are not capable of such an act." During lunch, Meiji laughed a lot. The emperor and the crown prince treated each other with cigarettes. Unlike the inveterate smoker Nikolai, Meiji did not smoke, but it was a special cigarette, a cigarette of the world. Consoling Meiji, Nicholas said that wounds were minor, and crazies were everywhere. Japanese society grieved after what Tsuda did. About 24,000 telegrams with condolences were sent to the Russian cruiser where Nicholas was staying. The incident even caused a suicide when a young seamstress, Yuko Hatakeyama, slit her throat with a razor in front of the Kyoto prefectural office as an act of public contrition, and soon died in a hospital. Accepting responsibility for the lapse in security, Home Minister Saigo Tsugumichi and Foreign Minister Aoki Shuzo resigned. In his personal diary, as reported by Nicholas II biographer Edward Radzinski, Nicholas gave most of the credit for saving him to Prince George, or Georgie, my savior, and his bamboo cane. Nicholas also admitted that he had no ill intent as he said, "I am not so very angry at the good Japanese for the repulsive act of one fanatic. As before, their model order and cleanliness are a pleasure, and I must confess I keep on watching, whom I see on the street from afar. What I couldn't understand was how Georgie, that fanatic, and I had ended up alone, in the middle of the street, why no one from the crowd rushed to my aid." Although Tsar Nicholas II was able to order the trial and execution of the attacker, he did not. He was pacifist and pious and maintained his patience and Christian faith until the end of his life under all circumstances. The former policeman Tsuda was sent to prison near Kushiro, Hokkaido, and died of an illness in September of the same year. His motivation for the attack remains unclear, with explanations ranging from mental derangement to hatred of foreigners. As for the rest of Nicholas's life, a far grislier fate awaited than being sword-struck by a Japanese madman. On July 17, 1918, Bolshevik assassins gathered together the entire Romanov family, Nicholas, his wife and their 5 children, and brought him into a basement. A massacre ensued, and within an hour, the 300-year Romanov family reign was over, their bodies burnt with acid. Nicholas was 50 years old.